gentlemen, this is a perfect platform for people to be successful when it comes to their investment because you get all the information with regards to your money from your experts. The next dignitary I'm going to call on stage is someone I'm so looking forward to listen to. He's considered as the wizard of investments and he's made for mutual funds. He's the Chief Executive Officer for Birla Sun Life Asset Management Cooperative Limited, where he has been associated with this brand since 1994. He has invested close to 24 years of his professional life in mutual fund industry as portfolio manager, both in fixed income and equity. In 2006, he wore the cap of Chief Investment Officer and progressed to become the CEO in 2009. A very active contributor towards taking Indian mutual fund industry to the next level. He's closely associated with key industry bodies. Apart from this, he has a very prestigious role as a chairman at AMFI. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for A. Balasubramanian. I was so looking forward to hear from you, sir. Welcome.
It's a long introduction for the long experience. Good evening to all of you. Thanks for taking time out to attend our session, which is the Money Hangout. So I'm also told is just the viewers are not just only in this room, and a lot of people also will be watching this in the Google Hangout across the country. And there's a new initiative that you have taken in order to reaching out to the more number of people at one go using the digital platform. Very quickly, I think the topic, of course, is more on how the impact on the economy is going to be on the demonetizations and how it's going to shape up. And there's been the question which, of course, keeps coming in everybody's mind, and that we have been addressing it for the last few weeks continuously, and even after event. And the month of November has been full of action in many ways. So I was just jokingly telling Mr. Dhirendra Kumar, the day the monetization was announced on November 8th, we also had instantly a meeting in North Block discussing about some of the roadmap for the Indian capital market with some of the policymakers as part of the industry association members. And evening when we came back home, we saw actually the demonetization being announced. The big picture, the way we look at, which I was also part of the Economic Times very recently to discuss about the big picture change. I think clearly the big picture is, it's actually something it's really big. And I mean it's really big. It's clearly has a huge impact in the longer term benefit of the Indian economy, which is quite substantial. It's a tough call, and India has taken this call very aggressively. One need to appreciate such a big steps being taken in one go. Setting a deadline of 50 days for it to be completed is something which is a bold steps. I think one has to appreciate that from one simple factor, that any change that I think has to happen in the country has to be combined with a high level of conviction. High level of conviction, determination, and that's the way it is done. And therefore, one has to welcome and appreciate that. What are the big picture change that we are seeing is the worldwide, the economies are moving into the digital economy. There are numbers which is floating around in the social medium, which is the US economy, more about 40% of the transactions happens through the digital platform, and rest all happens through the other modes of transactions. And if you elongate this number actually for most of the other economies, and most of the economies are globally are moving towards digital, which is basically paperless transactions. It's more of plastic cards kind of thing. Therefore, India is also having now taken the steps. Is actually moving in that direction. It's not that money is not going to be denied. I think the dealing in currencies, I think ideally should come down, and most of the transactions should happen through the banking channel, and that's I think is a big picture change that is coming in. I think one of the big things that has happened as part of the demonetization is actually made people aware the large pool of population in the country, where the penetration of a mobile platform is so high, the awareness about using the mobile as a technology has not been very, very high. The one change I think is brought actually the clear awareness among the large pool of the mobile users, which of course today mobile penetration is as is about 92 or 94, 93%. And that population actually straight away getting educated about demonetizations and the impact of demonetizations, and then how the whole the platform has to be used for the purpose of dealing with their money and so on and so forth, is something which I think is making it happen in one go because of this exercise. That is one. And second is, I think the large pool of money, which currently is not under the tax net. I think one of the big worry from the economy point of view, which has been the point of discussion for many number of years, not just only today, for many number of years, which is one ratio which we look at, the tax to GDP ratio. Despite we being a large populated country, clearly the tax to GDP ratio in the country has been very, very low. That's mainly because of the economy has got two economies. One is the main economy, and second is the parallel economy. And as a result of that, most of the people were spending a lot of money, but not paying the tax. And therefore, this actually brings actually the potential for doubling this number. I would even look at doubling this number. It can probably go up as is about 20-22% of the GDP would actually come under the tax net. And that again is something which I think probably we will see increased level of tax compliance. And why I'm specifically saying this on the tax compliance, the people who are not even having felt would have ever the need for filing the return, now I think they will at least start thinking actually that I need to file a return in order to ensure that I remain clean and so on and so forth. That I think is something, the mindset change that has come, is a big change that has come. So therefore, the tax compliance as a result of this, I think is also going to be a big change that we could expect as we move forward. Let us leave aside for the time being all the speculation that is going around that how much of the money will not get surrendered and how much of the money will be left in the RBI hand and how much of the money can be given back to the government of India in the form of dividend and so on and so forth. At this point of time, I'm assuming these are hypothetical discussion. There are hypothetical discussion. Frankly, we do not know how the number is going to come. But I think that is not the discussion that one should look at it. I think the big picture change that will come in the form of tax compliance is something is going to be all of us have to look at and should see as a welcome step. The second is, which of course is the big picture change, is the historically, if you look at the last 6 to 7 years, and all of us know about it, which is the Mengai, which is the inflation, has been the part of the discussions in most parts of the country. I think that's been the predominantly is one of the biggest weak link for India, which has been primarily responsible for keeping the interest rates high. I think last so many number of years interest rates have been high. I think one of the main reasons which I always used to talk about is the inflation and inflation. I think with this change, I think there is a high probability that inflation also is brought under control, because earlier the money that is not in the main economy does not value the money. It doesn't know the money, but they don't understand the value of the money, therefore they can pay any price to buy the goods. Because they don't actually look at what is the price they are paying, what they are looking at, actually how they are spending the money, and so on and so forth. Therefore, does not understand the value of the price they are paying. I think the moment it comes actually that actually it brings in a high level of awareness even on the spender, what is the price I am paying actually for the goods that I am buying. Therefore, the inflation as a category should also see a reduction and control as a result of this. This again is a big picture change. And third, as a result of that, I think if you are actually looking for a roadmap where the inflation is going to remain somewhat stable, which I think our estimate is about 3.5% could be the inflation that we could expect. And if you are going to stay at that level for a long period, then the added impact of that is going to come on the base on the interest rates. Of course, yesterday was the monetary policy, and a lot of hopes that I think they are going to cut the rate. That still remains. It's not that yesterday the rate cut has not come. That does not mean the rate cut is denied. It's only delayed actually, and which is again coming from the fact that one, the inflation, if it's brought under control, if it stays at this acceptable level about 3.5 to 4%. Then the Reserve Bank of India will have a more leg room to cut the rate, and that cutting the rate is going to be benefit a large pool of consumers in the country as time progresses in the form cutting the interest rates down. And the third which also has happened is actually the last few years, the deposit growth for the industry has been pretty low. Industry has been growing about 9 to 9.5% kind of deposit growth, and despite the large pool of money of 13 lakh crore is being in the system, That means that 13 lakh crores was not coming to the banking system. Now that is coming in, clearly improve the liquidity in the banking system, which otherwise is not available earlier. That liquidity is coming in, now it can actually is moved to the channelize that money into the productive assets, which I think is another big picture change which I am saying. The last thing which I think is also now is doing good for the nation. There are three types of financiers. One is of course organized financiers, which all of us know about the banking systems, which are comprising of public sector and private sectors. Then second is organized, but their cost of borrowing is very high, which is the organized channel, but their cost of lending is very high. When you go to the borrow from them, which is you can call it as the MFI, NBFCs, for any individual borrowing, they'll quote anywhere between 18 to 20%. That I call it as the organized channel, but their cost of borrowing from them is relatively high, because they are small ticket, but they give you money when you want it, and therefore the cost is high. The third set is actually the unorganized channel, but private financiers. I call it the private financiers. That segment is also pretty large, because if you look at the most parts of the country today are also filled with private financiers who actually who lends money to the needy people at say 2% per month or 3% per month. The exorbitant rates at which they all used to borrow. So now the whole thing is happening, there is a high probability the private financiers used to actually lend money in a black market. Also I think now is brought under the control, and therefore that market could potentially die. And that market could potentially lie, more money coming into the main channels will also actually increase the ability of the receiver of these deposits to cut the rates actually to the people even at the bottom of the level who are in need of money, but their cost of borrowing is very earlier. Now with this change coming in, their cost of borrowing could come down. Potentially actually is making money available for the large pool of people who are in need of money, but their ability to pay is high. Willingness to pay is high, ability we will not know, but willingness to pay always remains. Their intent is always to pay back is very high. With this, probably their ability to pay will also go up quite significantly, because they will not be probably able to live their life by just paying only the interest payment, not the principal payment. If you charge them high, the whole of their life, throughout their life, they will only pay high interest cost, but they will not be able to principal payment. With this change, I think they will become more viable from the point of dealing with. That I think is again, I see a big picture change that's coming in as part of the demonetization exercise. So therefore, there are 3-4 things which I mentioned about ultimately is going to have an impact in the long run and in the economy. I think it's the 1 quarter, 2 quarters price that one has to pay for benefiting the long run. That's what our assessment says. I think a lot of people are talking about the two-wheeler sales are down, and then the shops and malls, there are less number of sales happen. It's bound to happen, right? Even all of us today, one thing that I have learned actually that how can I live actually without spending, and that I think is something which is a psychological change which has come in the mind of the consumer of not spending too much in the last 1.5 months. That's a temporary. The one thing settled down, I think things should come back to looking at the macro picture, which is about the budgetary provisions and the way tax structure in the India can undergo a change. If there is high visibility of fiscal is getting better, therefore there is more money in the hands of people. Also it will ensure that the whole tax system can undergo a change. And these are some of the revelations I think one has to look for as we move forward. Therefore, from the big picture point of view, I think it's a big initiatives. Of course, a lot of criticisms and different views are that's coming in across different channels. But it's bound to come, and because nobody is, of course, is prepared for such kind of unexpected events. But I was also doing some kind of analysis on the basis of the last this 2016, when I look back and what we expected will happen and what actually has been happening. There is 2 things which I have been noticing actually. One is Brexit. The whole world, the high intellect people are actually expecting that will not happen, including myself. But what happened actually is that Brexit happened. And the whole world was talking about that the outcome in US election is going to be more in favor of Hillary Clinton. And what came actually is Trump. So therefore, the world, the way it is changing, which I think probably I would assume the social medium and the way I think the public at large behaves are actually is voting in favor of something which is least expected. Therefore, the another thing which of course I also am mentioning about demonetization, I was sharing this with my colleague, the demonetization is likely to actually have a huge impact. That are the general perceptions. The public at large is taking it very kindly, very nicely, and they're not actually really talking about that the impact is very large. That's again given the fact that I think the largest satisfaction level is being so high. I think once this actually is achieves the big purpose that I think is being driven at from the point of view increasing the tax to GDP ratio and focusing on leveling the inflation is low and improvement on the fiscal, I think all of that actually will give a better muscle power to the government of India to spend more money in the real need of building the infrastructure and even a social infrastructure and so on and so forth. Therefore, it has to give the longer term benefit to the country big time. So that's, I think, is something which I do look forward to. From the broader impact as a result of that, of course, it will have an impact on the earnings of the companies in the short term, but it doesn't mean actually the earnings of the company is going to have an impact in the longer term, which I think is something which I'm very confident, purely on the basis of the roadmap that I think would emerge on the basis of the outcome of the big picture outcome of the demonetizations should only benefit the large pool of companies that are operating in the country, and therefore one has to stay confident. The last, of course, not the least, which is nothing but an execution. I think one, you announce it, but also stay focused on execution. Which I think the key to the success is actually is the one is taking action and ensuring that action that is taken actually deliver the right purposes, which is nothing but putting the execution in place. My belief is actually the execution that the machinery that currently is working with the government seems to be is in the right direction in achieving actually the results that we are, I think, looking at from the whole result, whole exercise. So therefore, the impact on the economy, I think, is going to be pretty large in the longer term, and they're also being appreciated by people at large, even in overseas, including China. I think the reaction has been that pretty positive, and that's being seen actually is something everybody is keenly looking at. I think what could be an outcome, which in my personal belief is, I think the outcome could be much better than I think what all of us have been expecting to be, and therefore, from a big picture point of view, it will have a huge impact on the Indian economy, which I think will probably drive what we have been waiting for all these years is the developed economy. How long will remain as a developing economy? Maybe soon we'll probably see it getting into the developed economy, maybe the next 5 years or 10 years down the line. Maybe the developing will change actually towards developed and join hands with countries like US and Europe, who are supposed to be a developed economy. I think India also will join that bandwagon with this one move of demonetization. That, I think, is the actually big thing that is happening for India. So with that, I'll leave the stage for others, the speakers and panelists to share their view before we go on to the next session. Thank you.